Hello, everybody. Happy Merlot night. I am ecstatic to be talking about Merlot with everybody. So I am Molly Moran, if you don't know me. I'm the owner of Table Wine. And tonight we are going to talk about one of the unsung heroes of the wine world, Merlot. If you are joining us live, please take a second to just fill out the poll. It's one question. It just helps me get a sense of how frequently people watching are Merlot drinking. And then we also have a question in the chat, which many of you have answered. For everyone watching recorded or live, the question on the table is, what's your favorite board or card game? And we've gotten so many great answers. I am surprised by the fact that the game that has the most answers is Pandemic. I don't know how y'all can play a game called Pandemic. I looked at that at the board game store like a year ago and I was like, oh God, I don't want that. But I'm glad that you all enjoy it. I am part of a Ticket to Ride household, as some of you are. And my husband and I we were diehard Scrabble people. We've pulled back. Douglas is actually asking, is Pandemic a real game? Oh, it's a real game. It definitely is a real game. Yeah, it's a real game. But I'm glad for some of these other suggestions. Thank you. We need fresh game ideas in my house. We got Azul over the holidays. If any of you are board game people, Azul is a lovely game. And a game called Parks that is about the national parks, and it has this beautiful artwork, and it's lovely. Wingspan, a vote for Wingspan, that's also super pretty. And I know that there was a vote for Clue early on, and like my family, they indulge me and play it with me sometimes, but I beat them all the time, and they kind of don't really like playing with me. So anyway, Parks is awesome. Okay, we'll talk about Merlot, I swear. But thanks for all the great answers. Lots of great answers in the chat, so thank you. If you haven't joined us for wine class before, or maybe not in a while, we're going to use the chat as we taste through things. Feel free to ask questions as we're going along. If you are not watching this live, hi, it's all good. You don't need the chat. I will do my best to kind of convey what's being said in the chat live, or on the recording, pardon, so that you can be part of the conversation as best you can. And if you ever have questions, feel free to email me if you watch this later and you don't get to ask them live in the chat. So I want to just preface this evening with a word about Merlot. I love Merlot. It's not my favorite grape. It's not like my go-to, but I do love it and I do appreciate it deeply. And I think that this is like the perfect time of year to be drinking it. And if you want to hear me go on a Merlot, get on my Merlot soapbox, I highly recommend listening to the Table Wine podcast of Sideways. And I would also like to call out a certain Kristen Manti who joins us for many classes, Kristen and Patty, who apparently changed her picture on here to Paul Giamatti from Sideways. And I feel like you're trolling me. So yeah, we are drinking fucking Merlot, and that's what the class is about. So I don't even know why I looked. I don't normally look at your profile pictures, everybody, because so many of you have, just kind of like the bot thing that they give you, which is totally understandable. And then I was like scrolling through and I was like, what is that? And then I got salty. So listen to the Sideways episode of the Table Wine podcast if you want to hear me fully get like really upset about Merlot, but I'll try not to get too preachy tonight. So without further ado, let's talk about Merlot. And I should say, looking at the poll, it looks like a number of you drink it at least a few times a year, if not more. No one who answered said that they never drink it, which is kind of awesome. I love being a Merlot evangelist, so I do love turning people onto it, but it's also fun to teach a class to a group of people who already know they love it. So let's love it some more. So basic info about Merlot, in case you didn't know, Merlot is one of a number of child grapes of Cabernet Franc. So Cab Franc is the parent grape of Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon, as well as other grapes, Carmenere, and there are a couple other red grapes that that it is the parent of. But Merlot does have some similarities to Cab Franc and to Cab Sauv. So if you've ever had that where you're kind of like, oh, I didn't realize this was even Merlot, or this Merlot reminds me of Cab, there's a reason why, right? They have a parent in common. It was most likely it originated in the late 1700s. That's when like the first written account of Merlot happened. It was definitely in Bordeaux. So that is where we're going to start our adventure tonight. It was definitely in Bordeaux. Merlot translates to little blackbird. It's not the direct translation, so it's a antiquated spelling of a French word, but it does mean little blackbird because the berries themselves are pretty dark and they're very like, I don't know, I don't want to say sweet in terms of like sweetness. They're like gentle, easy to love. And so that was their nickname, and that's where the name Merlot came about. I love that you're saying you might drink more Merlot after this. I hope so. It's the intention of tonight's class is to make you realize Merlot is what you actually want. So Merlot, it's medium full body, medium acidity, and acidity is going to come up in a couple interesting ways when we taste through these wines, and then medium high in tannin. It ripens a little earlier. Cabernet Sauvignon ripens a little later, and so they're often used in conjunction with one another to make it easy for winemakers and vineyard, the people growing the wine or growing the grapes, growing the wine. Wouldn't that be amazing? You can age Merlot for about 5 to 10 years. I wouldn't say that like most Merlot is kind of ideal for that about 10-year range. So if you like any of these tonight, it might be cool to, none of them are super expensive. You could see how they change over time, or just like so that if you're out at a restaurant and you see kind of an older vintage of a Merlot, don't dismiss it. It might be really great. I'm drinking tea tonight, everybody. I'm battling some not super awesome feeling in my gut. So I have peppermint tea to keep me company while we talk about wine. The calling card of Merlot, and you're going to see it with these 3 very, very different wines. And even if you're not drinking along, I think that this is the thing to know about Merlot, is that it is known for its soft mouthfeel. The word that gets thrown around in wine profession with Merlot is velvety, or plush or lush, those kinds of words. It shows up, I guess I would say, in kind of different ways, depending on where in the world the Merlot is from, but it is a softer wine. And that is either something that you're really drawn to or something that maybe isn't your jam. But again, it looks like a lot of you are Merlot drinkers, so I assume it's at least sometimes your jam. Because of the tannic structure, not having too much acidity, the body, the whole thing, all of that together means it likes roasted things. It likes that kind of slightly caramelized, the Maillard effect, like the slightly caramelized thing that happens in roasted meats. But it also loves mushrooms. It even loves greens, which a lot of red wines don't play very nicely with cooked greens, but Merlot is one of them that does. So again, I will have more specific food pairing suggestions for each of the individual wines as we go through, but that's just kind of like a general, when you're, I don't know, ever at a restaurant again, and you're trying to like figure out what you want to drink with what you're eating. Here are some of the most common aromas and flavors that you get with Merlot. It is fruity, right? It is a fruity wine. Cherry is kind of the most prominent note, and that might be red cherry or black cherry, tart cherry or ripe cherry. But cherry's kind of the bigger one. But other things like raspberry, plum, blackberry. Those are all, fair game fruits that you'll get with Merlot. The earth mineral category really, or the earth animal category for Merlot specifically, it's really all about minerals. The oak notes, there are a lot of them that can come out in Merlot, depending on how it's aged, whether it's aged in oak or not. But that can be chocolate versus like cocoa powder, vanilla, cinnamon, nutmeg, clove, all of those kinds of things. And then there's often herbaceousness as well. I listed some specific ones that people often pick up, rosemary being kind of the most noticeable one, but sage, bay leaf, but you can also just kind of get that like, it's herby. It reminds me of my spice drawer kind of thing. I have to pause for just a moment. The comment is, hi, Molly, Barb and friends here. We are appreciating getting the Merlot down on Merlot. I love the pun, and please keep them coming because there's nothing I love more than a pun. My humor is like the humor of like a 7-year-old, maybe a 9-year-old, like just old enough to get wordplay, but not like anything sophisticated. Like I'm just like, yeah, give me a pun. I love it. Any questions about any of that kind of fundamental stuff? Merlot is super widely grown. It is one of what are called the noble grapes, one of the grapes that are grown in the majority of wine regions around the world. So you can find Merlot in a lot of different places. And what can be very interesting is to try to kind of track where in the world you like Merlot from, because it does really change. That's how I do most of these varietal specific classes. We taste the same varietal from 3 different spots, and I try to kind of pick very different spots so that you can kind of see the differences and the similarities. But I do think that Merlot is one where it's like really wildly different. All right, well, let's get into the wines then. So, as I said at the beginning, Merlot is from Bordeaux. That is where it originated. As far as the research goes, it was not a purposeful crossbreeding. That could be proven to be true or untrue, as wine historians just like kind of keep going. It feels like as soon as I learn a story of a grape, I then learn a new story of a grape. But for now, we'll say that it was most likely a genetic mutation that happened in the field. So with a very obscure mother grape, Cab Franc, and this really, really bizarre ornamental grape that can be used to make wine, but it really was grown in vines that like sat in front of people's homes. So it was like more like decorative. So Merlot, French Merlot specifically, it is the most widely planted grape in all of France, both red and white. It's the grape. I think that is not what people assume. So if you did not know that, you joined good company. I don't think a lot of people know that. So it is really widely grown and it's often blended. You don't see a lot of 100% Merlot coming out of France. Particularly in Bordeaux, it's blended with Cabernet Sauvignon, Cab Franc, Malbec, and a grape called Petit Verdot, and it can be in differing percentages. But Merlot is kind of the workhorse of Bordeaux. So most times that you are drinking an affordable red Bordeaux, it is almost invariably Merlot dominant. That's not always true, but like if you're buying a Bordeaux for like under 20, under 25, chances of it being at least a majority Merlot, high. Chances of it being 100% Merlot, lower. Definitely lower. And I should say, I mentioned that acidity is an oddball here. So in France, they often use Merlot to add acidity to the blend. So it is grown in the Languedoc-Roussillon, which is in the southern part of France where it's quite warm. And in Bordeaux, where I told you those varietals. None of those varietals are like known for being like high acid wines. And so Merlot is often used for its fruitiness and then for its acidity. Even though it's not high acid, it's still used for its acidity. So that's kind of like why winemakers choose Merlot in blends. French Merlot, honestly, like I'm painting with a broad strokes here because there are definitely differences. But generally, you can count on French Merlot to have noticeable fruit. It can be black fruit or red fruit. It kind of varies. But then also mineral notes and herb notes. So if you've ever kind of wondered what's an herby red, French Merlot is a great way to go. Food pairings on this wine. Beef Wellington is like the classic. Beef Wellington and Merlot is amazing. This has a little bit of herbaceousness to it, so it's great with ratatouille, which I realize like super not in season right now. But either you don't eat seasoning, you don't give a crap, or you can remember that I said this and in the summer drink it. And aged cheeses of all varieties. So the one thing, and please do feel free to start smelling and tasting. One thing to know about the region of Bordeaux is that there is a river that goes through it. It's the Dordogne River. And on the right bank, that is where the wines are Merlot dominant. And on the left bank, that's where the wines are Cabernet Sauvignon dominant. So if you really enjoy French Merlot and you want to like really get to know it, learning the subregions and which ones are right bank versus left bank is a path for you to kind of get nerdier and learn more. So one of the reasons that I picked this, I picked these three wines. I know some of you aren't joining us in Madison, but I'll just want to give you kind of like the philosophy with the class wines specific to tonight. We don't sell a ton of Merlot at Table Wine. The people who like it, some of you, are loyal and buy it, but it doesn't have its own shelf like Pinot Noir has or Cab has, right? Like it's niche. And so it was very important to me that I bring in three brand new wines. Sometimes, I feel like, oh, that might be on the shelf, but not everybody's had it before. But with Merlot specifically, because we don't have such a huge selection, I was like, oh, I need to make sure that they're all new. So then when I was thinking of French Merlot, I wanted to make sure that what I was getting was at least Merlot dominant, which this is. And this is a lovely husband and wife couple. They're about my age. They're basically natural winemakers. They don't use that word, but they are certified organic, practicing biodynamic. They use low sulfite. They're really pretty, hands off in terms of that, all of that stuff. So I think what you get in the glass is a purity of fruit. I think that you can really, Barb said that it smells like a cherry pie. I think that you can really taste like the Merlot-ness of it, which I love. So let me know what you think. Alexa says she likes how this has a pretty evident cherry tasting note, but also a solid herb, getting like bay leaf maybe. I agree. Blueberry. I smell a little blueberry. It's interesting. I also really love the tannins here. And with this wine, they are not using, they're using neutral oak. So they're not trying to go for like a super oaky style at all, which is a bit of a departure. So kind of the, Craig says that high on tannins for Leslie, who's tannin averse. Well, I think you'll be okay later. Merlot's not exactly low on tannin. So, but if you're tannin averse and you're like, what do I do now? Have it with some food. If you eat cheese, tannins will strip away the fat of the cheese, and so it's really quite delicious with it, and it can help. I'm not Miss Tannin either. I'm not like, oh yeah. And they can be really lovely with food. So I hope that helps. Katja and Drew both like it. Nice and earthy along with the fruit, right? And I do feel like, for those of you who don't drink a lot of French wine, I do feel like though it is fruity at first, it also smells quite French. I know that's not like the most helpful thing, but if I were blind tasting it, I feel like my mind would go to France because of that herby, like the dusty earthiness and then the herbiness too. So also reminds us of mushrooms. Curious. Interesting. It is big on the tannins. It's no joke. And I should say, if you ever are not enjoying the tannins on a wine, you can also try decanting it or aerating it, and that will soften those tannins and maybe help you out, maybe make the wine more in line with what you want. But the French do like a rustic style. One of the other reasons that I like this wine, or why I picked this wine specifically, the Old Guard in Bordeaux. Again, I don't want this to just be Bordeaux class, but it's worth noting because it's important to like the history of Merlot and kind of why Merlot was made the way that it was made. The Old Guard of Bordeaux really believed in making wine the way they'd been making it. And that included a lot of oak and going for very specific house styles, which I completely understand and love, right? Because you get to know a winery and know that you like their style. But they didn't care at all about things like pesticides. They didn't care at all about not kind of like, using commercial yeast, not, like there was like a lot of consistency over anything. And so I also am kind of drawn to this couple because it's called Les Caprices, which is the whims. And so they're kind of like, yeah, this vintage might taste different than the next vintage. And that's kind of like the point of drinking wine. So yeah, I thought that was fun. Patrick says it tastes great. I'm glad. Is there anybody out there who's really not feeling it, not into this wine? It's okay. I didn't make it. You won't hurt my feelings. Thumbs up. Great. I think it looks to be the darkest of the Merlots. Did you pour all three? Is that why you're saying that? The Italian is pretty light. You did? Okay. I only have one glass, so I can't say for sure. The Italian is definitely light in color, which I found surprising. Craig says, right, medium for me, like the taste, less the aftertaste. That's fair. I do think that it is very different on the palate than the finishes, right? Like I do think that the wine definitely changes, which I guess I would put the plug in for that's what's interesting, or like that's what makes me want to kind of keep drinking. Personally, I guess maybe that's just more of a personal thing, like where I tasted a wine today. Actually, it was Merlot. It was a Washington State Merlot. And it just tasted exactly like it smelled, and it just tasted exactly the same. Tip of my tongue, middle of my tongue, back of my tongue, and on the finish. Like there was like nothing interesting about it. And like it was pleasant, I guess. Like if I don't know, if I was at a wedding and I had to drink a glass of it, I wouldn't be upset, but I probably wouldn't have a second glass of wine. Like I'd just be like, okay, that's not really like worth it to me. Which I do think is sometimes the knock on Merlot. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts? Another thing we like about this, smells very vanilla to us, but it's surprising in the taste and tastes more savory than expected. Yeah, it is definitely more savory than expected, I think. I think like for me, sorry, I feel like I have a sneeze coming on. Okay. For me, there's like a moment in the front mid palate where I'm like, oh my God, it's just like so fruity. And then it's like, no, I'm not. Thank you guys. Thank you. I'm not just all fruit, right? Like I'm earth, I'm herbs. I've got look at my structuring tannins, and it's kind of like, you don't know me. I'm gonna surprise you. Alexis says that she enjoys it. There's some notes she can't figure out, and it's bothering her, some specific earthy scent that you can't pick out. Okay. We have the time. Anybody want to throw out? Okay, other people are saying yes to the earthy. All right, hold on. Let's see. Let's see if we can get there. If anybody has any thoughts, throw them out into the chat. Like crunchy leaves in Ireland, but it's not that. I think it's mushroom. I wasn't necessarily with Katja and Drew right away. There is a significant mushroominess that is not the same mushroominess that shows up in Pinot, or it's not like the smell of a white mushroom. It's like cooked roasted mushroom on the finish. That's my opinion. Take it or leave it. If anybody has any other thoughts, let us know. Yeah, so if you like French Merlot, you're going to find it in a lot of blends from the Languedoc-Roussillon region, but you're very rarely going to see it like called out on the label Merlot. And then you'll find it in Bordeaux. Winemakers are getting better about including info about percentage breakdown and stuff like that, but you won't necessarily always find it. We do that research for you as best that we can. So those will be in the notes for anything that you buy from us. And like an ingredient list, the grape that's listed first is the most dominant, or, there's the largest percentage of that grape. So hopefully that helps. So, and then there's not a lot of Merlot anywhere else in France, and yet it is the most widely grown grape there. That's how much they grow in those places. There's a little bit grown sporadically other places. Kristen and Patty asked if I said the percentage of Merlot this is, and I did not. Let me, I never do this, but I believe that there is a little bit of, oh my goodness. I feel like I'm going to sneeze again. I never look this up while we're in class, but I'm going to see if I can find it. Pardon me, everybody, while I'm looking. I know there's a little bit of Cab Franc and Cab Sauv blended in. So their website, unfortunately, is saying 100% Merlot, but I know that that's not for the vintage. I don't think that's for the vintage that we have, but I could be wrong. I think there was a little discrepancy in my research on vintages, which, it's the whims. I guess it does have it is 100% Merlot. So this is, at least that's what I decided when I wrote the tasting notes. I decided that was it, which would make sense. That is my normal. I try to always go 100% if I can. Okay. Thanks for letting me try to find an answer that I probably had all along. All right, we are off to Italy. Italy does not have the best stats on grapes, percentage of grapes with like overall. So what I can say is that Merlot is the 5th most widely planted red grape. I don't know where that makes it stand in all of the grapes. I would assume that it's somewhere around 10th, thinking about Pinot Grigio and stuff like that. So it's there. Here's the interesting thing about Merlot and acidity in Italy. So whereas in France, Merlot is added to blends to add acidity because of how acidic Italian varietals are, the Italians often use Merlot in blends to balance out the acidity. So that's where that mediumness can take you one way or another as a winemaker, which is really kind of fascinating, right? Like it's pretty cool. So there you go. It is most seen in Tuscany, where it is used in what are called super Tuscans. I don't know if you all are familiar with this movement in wine. It kind of hit big in the late 90s, early 2000s, where winemakers were tired of playing by all the bureaucratic rules. And so they started blending more global varietals like Merlot and Cab Sauv with Italian varietals like Sangiovese. And so they weren't allowed to call them Chianti or anything like that. And so they very smartly came up with a marketing tool and called them Super Tuscans. And now the phrase Super Tuscan can basically mean any wine, any red wine from Tuscany. That's it. Like it could be 100% Sangiovese. I have tasted a quote unquote Super Tuscan that is 100% Sangiovese. So take it or leave it. Take that information, do what you want with it. And then the other main region is Friuli. So this is the wine that we are tasting is from that region. So it's the larger bucket is Venezia Giulia, and that is where Friuli is. So it's up in the northeast. So cooler, mountainous, right? We're staying in the cool climate still. So France is cool climate, and then this part of Italy is cool climate. I have tasted Sicilian Merlot, Sardinian Merlot. They are very, very different. The warmer it is, the riper the fruit gets, and it totally takes on totally different characteristics, as we will see with our third wine. Italian Merlot is really known for red fruit. That's not to say that when you taste this wine, you're like not allowed to taste black fruit, but that's kind of the more noticeable thing, like tart raspberry and red cherry and those kinds of things. And again, herbs and minerals come out here. This region of Italy, although it's on the eastern side, in the grand scheme of things, isn't that far away from France. So it shares a lot of similarities in that regard. As has already been discussed, this specific wine is quite light in color. I think it's pretty interesting. So give it a swirl. Let me know what you're smelling and tasting. One of my suggestions for just food for tonight, because it just is going to go well with everything, is pizza. And I think that like this is specifically the wine I had in mind when I suggested that. But I do think that this is really great with roasted meat, specifically pecorino, aged pecorinos. It's really great with cheese like that too. Will is saying very strong cherry, right? Yeah. Yes. So different from number one, so different, right? It's very soft, right? When I was talking about the softness, this I think is exactly kind of like what I had in mind when I said it. Cranberry, red cherry, less tannic, lots of minerality. That's very true. And that region of Italy is really known for that. So whether you're drinking white wine from that region, red wine, skin contact, sparkling, they all have this through line of minerality. So yeah, raspberry, definitely cherry, and a bar Corellini pizza. That sounds delicious. Kristen and Patty are asking Thanksgiving wine. Hell yes. Right? Hell yes. I think it would be great. I think it would be absolutely fantastic. And this for me is exactly the kind of wine that like I love and would be like a pet project for me to keep on the shelf. We only have 28 spots for red wines from Italy. And so it's very hard for me to give one of those spots to a Friulian Merlot. So if around Thanksgiving time you want this, I hope that you remember, or maybe I'll try to remember, I'll try to highlight it, but just like any of these wines, any of these class wines, like if we don't always carry it, that doesn't mean we can't get it for you. So just remember. Thumbs up for Craig, always looking for good wines to sip while cooking. Leslie says it's good. Oh, she's been cheating and likes the California the best. Oh, all right then. Light, easy to drink, super big people pleaser. Yes, right? Like just a total crowd pleaser in the best possible way, right? It's going to go with a lot of different kinds of food. The person who likes a fuller bodied wine, while this is light, there is a fullness of flavor. So it's not, I mean, it's medium, right? But there's something there to it. I think it's just like, I agree that it's a total crowd pleaser. Riley is loving it. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear it. I won't get up on my, Becky says that their group likes the French a bit better, but you drink the Italian too. That's great, right? Like that's totally great. I think for me, as we kind of saw in the chat, like the French was well received, right? Almost everybody enjoyed it. It's a little bit more of a think piece, right? There's a little bit more, whereas the Pecorari is a little like easy to like, right? And Alexis agrees, right? Like I think that that's kind of the thing. I'm gonna get on like a little soapbox for a hot second. So my Merlot evangelism comes out of the fact that when people are describing the kind of red wine they want, they are often describing, honestly, either one of these two wines, as different as they are. And then when we say like, do you drink much Merlot, or, would you consider Merlot? Now, I will say that our customers trust us and will say like, I don't know, maybe, okay. And they'll go with it. But for a long time, people were just kind of like, and not just at Table Wine, like everywhere I worked, were like, absolutely not. Like, no, I hate Merlot. I don't like it. And I'd be like, but what you've just described is Merlot, right? Like what you like is this kind of wine, and you're telling me that you want Malbec, and Malbec is going to be sweet and jammy, and you're telling me you don't like sweet, and then you want, $10 Malbec for I don't know what reason, and I'm like, oh, okay, here's your Malbec. I find it fascinating. I am, however, old enough to remember how incredibly ubiquitous Merlot was when I was just coming of age. And there was so much Merlot everywhere, right? Like my parents' dinner parties were just like, it was Merlot everywhere. And they were very oaky. They tasted like wood chips. And they were horrible. I mean, there's a reason that it fell out of fashion, because there was like a lot of not good Merlot. So I am happy now that there is good Merlot. So that's a little soapbox. And I'm just going back and revisiting the chat for a second here. So Kristen and Patty are saying the French, if it's just Kristen and Patty together, the Italian, if it's for us and others. Totally understand that, right? Alexis agrees with that. And then Whitney is saying the lightest in color of all of them. In case, yes, this is the lightest in color, right? I think it's almost Pinot-esque. It's very, the tell, in blind tasting, they say that Merlot has an orange hue to it, particularly towards the edge. Almost every time I taste Merlot, I look to see if I'm like catching it, and I very rarely see that. But I feel like maybe there's a slight oranginess to this wine, but slight. I'm just like planting that seed, or trying to like convince myself that I see it. Questions, thoughts about Italian Merlot? You don't see it a lot, right? It's it's not like super, super popular, but like we have a red blend from Tuscany, the Mandriolo, that is Sangiovese, Merlot, and Syrah. And so, and then from time to time we'll carry 100% Merlot. So Katja and Drew are asking, are there any Super Tuscans that are Merlot dominant? Yes. Yes, there are. Yep, there are Super Tuscans that are 100% Merlot. Yes, there are Super Tuscans that are Merlot dominant. There are Super Tuscans that are basically Bordeaux, just being grown in Tuscany. There are no rules. The rules are there are no rules. So yes, for sure. But again, it can be tricky to figure that information out, right? Because they're not necessarily telling you that. They want you to know that you like their brand or their named wine or whatever. So, any other questions? Thoughts? Okay. Let's go to California. So I kind of alluded to this. The first two wines that we tasted were from cool climate places. And now we're going to switch gears and go to a warm climate place. So the stats coming out of California are hard to get modern numbers on. So like I could find information from 2016 and 2018 in terms of how widely grown Merlot is. So I can't say 100% for sure because the California winemakers do change over their plantings a bit more than you'd see in other spots. So I can't say for sure, but most likely it is the fourth most widely grown grape in California, the third most widely grown red. Believe it or not, Chardonnay is the most widely grown grape in California, above Cab, which I find surprising. Regions to know for Merlot. Oh my God, I almost said Cab. Merlot in California, Napa and Sonoma for sure, Monterey and Paso Robles. They grow Merlot throughout. Those are the spots that I would say kind of seek those out and find some Merlot from. What you'll notice in California Merlot across the board is a riper fruit, whether that's black or red fruit. It's definitely riper than where we've been. And that's the warm climate part, right? Cool climate, grapes don't get as ripe. The fruitiness is not as ripe. Here, we're dealing with a warmer spot, and so the fruit is ripe. Here, they're going for an oakiness that some of you are already picking up on, right? For those of you who are smelling right now, right? You're picking up on this oakiness. And that is a calling card of California, right? That is what they're known for, right? From a food pairing perspective, this is great with barbecue, really great with barbecue. Really great with grilled meat of any kind. If you're not a meat eater, this is a wine that can handle the greens that I was talking about earlier, cooked greens, things like that. So it isn't, and I mean, it will be great with your pizza. If anybody else got pizza, like it'll be great with that, but that's kind of like where it would shine more, I guess. So at the time of the movie Sideways, if you haven't seen it, it came out in 2004. Around that time, Merlot was the most dominant red grape in California, and it has fallen out of favor a bit, but it is still widely grown. It grows easily. People, so winemakers do like it. It's not completely out of favor. Okay, so looking at the chat, we've got lots of oakiness people, clove coming up, cola, specifically a Goose Island bourbon barrel aged cola stout. Fascinating. Sweeter than the others. Spearmint or eucalyptus. I agree with the eucalyptus thing. 100%. I definitely get that. But then also there is definitely oak there, right? I don't think it's too. Subtle. My good. Yeah. Craig's saying eucalyptus. You guys are good noses. Way to go, everybody. Look at that. Kristen and Patty are asking, is eucalyptus an oak note? We do smell it too. No, it's actually most often a Cab Franc and family note. So, yeah. Alexis says, this reminds me exactly of what I think of for a Central Coast Merlot. Yeah, I agree. That's the reason that I picked it. I think that this wine is just like super prototypical of Paso Robles, right? I am getting the cola too, by the way. For me, it's Dr. Pepper. That's my cola note. There were definitely tannins there, right? But when I was talking about like the velvetyness, the plushness, here we are. One thing that I find super fascinating is that the French and the California have the same alcohol. They're both listed at 14.5%. Now, they could be lying one way or the other, but it is interesting to me that the French is as high as that, and that the broadside, honestly, that it's only 14.5%. It's a bigger wine. Katja and Drew are saying more minerality than you were expecting for Paso. I think that that's one of the cool things about Paso. And I think Alexis can speak to it in the chat more because she has visited there frequently. When the wines from that area are well made, there's a clayness, like a clayey minerality, even though as far as I know, there isn't like a lot of clay in that area, right? But there's like a wet clay smell and flavor to a lot of reds from Paso, which I think is what makes them interesting, right? Because it is pretty warm there. So it'd be easy for them to get kind of, overripe and boring. The question is that it's 14.5% on the label, but what's the plus or minus for US standards? And then Nikki is coming in with the 2%. Yes. So in the US, we give winemakers 2% wiggle room. So this wine could be as high as 16.5 or as low as 12.5. That's right. So the EU only gives you 1%. So there's less room for error. But I do think that that's worth noting, right? Because the broadside to me definitely tastes a little boozier. It's not like super hot or anything like that. And I don't mean to make it sound, if it's sounding like I don't like it, I hope that's not coming across, because I really do. I think it's like ripe black cherry and cola and this clay thing and the eucalyptus. And like, I think that there's a lot going on. I think it's really a beautiful example. Of the region. But it's just like, I was saying that it's like riper fruit, right? And like, this is definitely riper, which is why it's really great with spicier things, right? It's why it's great with barbecue sauce. I can kind of handle that. I found it really funny as I was doing research for the class and picking the wines. I almost picked a Washington State Merlot because I love Washington State Merlot so much. And I don't know, I just find it exciting. And I was like, wait, that's 3 cool climate Merlots. I should have a warm climate Merlot. Like I should include one. And so then I was on Broadside's site and looking up information about it, and they referred to themselves as being cool climate. And I was like, is this not where I think it is? And I'm like looking at the map, right? And I'm like, nope, you're just where everybody else is. And I was like, guys, I hate to break it to you, but it's pretty warm there. This is a warm climate wine. So don't trust everything you read on the internet, I guess. Alexis is saying it's a warm climate Merlot done well, right? Exactly that. That's exactly it. And I think that that's what's great about it. Sometimes I use the word hedonistic. There's a little bit of that to this wine, I think. Which, we've got a little bit more of winter left, right? So a wine like this is good for a cold night, right? I think it's great. Katya and Drew, it's like ginger cookies with cherry compote. Yum. That sounds great. And yes, also that. Alyssa's asking, how would I describe the dryness of this one? I know you're not supposed to use the term sweet with reds, but this tastes sweeter to me than the others. So, two things. I mean, if a wine is sweet, it's sweet, right? Like there's no getting around that, right? You don't have to like not say it. So I think the two distinctions I want to make, one here is that the fruit is ripe, and it tastes ripe, right? And then I do think that there is some actual sweetness to this wine. It's not overdone. It's not too sweet, but it's there. I would never. Alyssa used to be in wine sales. So I can say, I think that she and I might approach wine differently than the rest of you. So I would never say sweet to a customer, because that's going to make them not want to buy it, even if it's in line with what they're describing that they like, right? I don't think that this gets into jammy land. I don't think that this gets into weird compote. Not weird, but like overly. I mean, I guess Katya and Drew did say cherry compote, so maybe it feels a little compote-y to some people, but I don't feel like it's like super candied or anything like that. So I would just kind of talk about the ripeness of it, and the lushness of it, because I don't have the specs in terms of like, how much sugar is in this wine, but I can say subjectively, yes, there's some sweetness there. So I hope that helps. Craig is saying the advantage of this Zoom class is you get to keep the whole bottle, or I guess Leslie said that. It is the advantage, right? It is absolutely the advantage. So we only do 3 wines, but you get them all. I don't know how many of you, I think at least some of you were in the first virtual class I did like 2 years ago. In person, when I teach classes in person, I teach typically between 5 and 6 wines, and really was in a groove of teaching 6 wines. And I took a class that I was going to teach in person and made it virtual. And I was like, oh, but we need all of these. And I had y'all buy 5 bottles of wine, right? And then you all came back to me with, what the hell am I supposed to do with 5 open bottles of wine? And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Your fridge doesn't look like my fridge. I was like, oh, never mind. So Alexis saying that class was excellent. Thank you. So now we do 3, but that does mean you get 3 bottles of wine. So that's great. Patrick is saying, what if you drank the first 2 bottles already? I mean, you're having a night. Drink some water. Have some water. That's what I would say. But keep having a great time. Okay. Questions about any of these wines? Thoughts about any of them, or Merlot in general? We love planning which bottle we'll continue drinking with dinner tonight, and then what we need to make for dinner in the coming nights for the other 2. Oh, that's great. I love that so much. I usually do a better job of planning my meal with the wine class, but tonight I have like a spicy coconut milk broth soup and these, and that did not go together. I don't know what I'm going to do, but that's okay. That's all right. Whitney is asking, does Table Wine carry these bottles outside of the wine tasting? So we have a few bottles of each of these wines at the shop right now, like, back up for class packs. So we do have some but I can't say 100% which ones we will continue to carry. So TBD on that. But if there's, like I said at the beginning, Whitney, if there's ever one that you want, just let me know. I'm going to go back and look. I could have mistaken the Paso wine for a cab. Not sure if that's good or bad. Okay, so on Monday night, I did staff training with my staff. We did blind tasting. I never do cab because cab is super hard to call. And I was like, I'm just going to do it anyway. And we had a big, lengthy discussion about Merlot, cab, and Cab Franc, and which, how to call it. Because that particular cab was kind of herby. And the fact of the matter is they're all very similar, and they are related, and you can tell. So you're spot on for not being able to necessarily pick that out. Kristen and Patty said ribs have been on. So Paso tonight, yeah, that'll be absolutely delicious. Craig says, I'm mostly a white wine person, but taking the red classes makes me reconsider. I love that. Thank you. I'm glad that you're open to it and open to trying. These varietal classes always make me want to open other bottles of the varietal that I own. I mean, have yourself a time this weekend. Let's see, rankings. We've got Italy, California, France. California, Italy, France. California, Italy, France. France, California, Italy. France, it's so great. So some of you, France is your least, and some of you, France is your first. California, Italy, France, California, Italy. Hilarious. Hilarious. I love it. I love it. But Italy's no one's first. How curious. How curious. France is clearly your top. Yeah, I love it. Oh, Italy's Craig's first. Okay, great. Somebody liked Italy the most. I'm glad. I'm having a hard time deciding. That's the only reason I'm not answering this question. France first, but we're a divided house on numbers 2 and 3. I'm a divided house on 1 and 2. California is definitely my third. Sorry to all you California lovers. Not my bag. I just can't decide. It's okay. I don't have to decide. I'll just stop. I'll just stop banting about and thinking about it. If you have questions, let me know. Drop them in the chat. We have virtual and in-person classes coming up in March, which is like super exciting. So, at the beginning of March, I'm teaching a class about 2 of my very favorite winemakers in Spain. And if the names don't mean anything to you, I just recommend that you come, because it's going to be 3 phenomenal reds from Spain. And I'm going to be giddy excited about it. One of them is Telmo Rodriguez, who I could just talk about forever because I adore his wines. So that's coming up. And then there are spots still in both of the in-person classes. So if you're feeling comfortable with in-person, we've got really fun blind tasting class and then geeky, nerdy soil class. So think about coming to those. You do have to be vaccinated, and you do have to show me proof of that, because we're all going to sit around communal tables and drink wine together. So we're going to, do it safely. So consider those if you haven't already signed up. We've got a wine tasting, like an in-person, like, just like kind of like come hang out. It's not like a formal class. So that's coming up in March. So we're kind of getting back to some events. I am going to continue to offer virtual classes for a while, right? Steph saying, happy to hear about proof of vaccination. Absolutely, Steph. There is no way, there is no chance. Even if I don't take my mask off in front of you guys, there's just no way that I could. There's just no way that I would do it any other way, right? I just think, like, of course, that's how we're gonna do this, right? So I'm gonna continue to offer virtual classes, but probably a mix of some virtual and some in person. And I love the virtual too. I just think it's really fun. And you guys are also great about the chat that I love it. And those of you who are watching the recording, this is great because you can watch it whenever whenever you have time, right? And then you can get drunk and you don't have to drive home. So you're home already. So you can finish those bottles of wine and not be worried about it at all. So Riley, I love that you're joining from South Carolina. I saw your name and I was like, wait. I mean, I know you've taken some of them, but it just, every time I see it, it just gets me excited. And I know, Steph, I think you're up north, right? Or you were up north, maybe you're not there now, but I know people are joining from all over and I just think it's awesome. Yeah, you're in Spooner. Douglas was joining us from Chicago. It's great. I'm gonna say goodnight now because I'm gonna cough and that's gonna be really awkward on camera. So thank you guys. I'm glad Merlot class was a blast. I had a really wonderful time. I hope you did too. And I will talk to y'all soon.